Hello, fourth grade, and welcome to lesson 14-3. This lesson is all about repeating patterns. So this is where you're going to see a whole lot of shapes, stuff that you saw when you were in much younger grades. You're going to be applying those patterns and taking them a little bit further in this lesson so that you can predict what the next shape in a pattern will be. So let's go ahead and watch our short video lesson together, and then we'll get started on our notes and guided practice.
How can you use a repeating pattern to predict a shape? Think about this question during the lesson. Rashad is making a repeating pattern for the rule triangle, square, trapezoid. What will be the 49th shape in the pattern? A repeating pattern is made up of shapes or numbers that form a part that repeats. How many shapes are in this pattern before it repeats?
All right, so let's go ahead and figure this out.
Drag shapes to complete the pattern from the first position.
Okay. So let's see, if this is our pattern, we're going to put our shapes in there one at a time. That's the first shape, the second shape, the third shape, and then it repeats 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So let's take a look at these shapes and see what position they're in. So we know that this one, our trapezoid, is the first shape, the fourth shape, and the seventh shape. Our triangle is the second, the fifth, and the eighth, and so on. Now the square is at position 3, 6, and 9. Now we know these are multiples of 3. 3, 6, and 9 are multiples of 3. So one less than that would be the triangle shape, and one more than that would be the trapezoid shape. So let's keep that in mind as we work through the rest of these questions.
3 shapes are in the pattern before it repeats. Look for features of the repeating pattern. The trapezoid is the third, sixth, and ninth shape in the pattern. The positions of the trapezoids are multiples of 3. The triangle is the first, fourth, and seventh shape in the pattern. The positions of the triangles are one more than a multiple of 3. The square is the second, fifth, and eighth shape in the pattern. The positions of the squares are one less than a multiple of 3. The triangle is in position number 1, 4, and 7. What position will the next triangle after 7 be in? The next triangle will be in the 10th position. What is the remainder when you divide 4, 7, and 10 by 3?
Select your answer.
The remainder is 1. Now use the repeating pattern to solve the problem. Divide 49 by 3. You divide by 3 because there are 3 items in the repeating pattern. 49 divided by 3 equals 16, remainder 1. The pattern repeats 16 times. The first shape in the repeating pattern, a triangle, then appears. 49 is one more than a multiple of 3. So the 49th shape is a triangle. Is 1 the remainder when you divide any number that is one more than a multiple of 3 by 3? Yes, 1 is the remainder. Now you know how to use a repeating pattern to predict a shape.
Great job!
Okay, so let's take a look at this more carefully. Now we have 3 shapes in this pattern. So that's why we're dividing by 3, because these are in groups of 3. We want to know what the 49th shape is. Now we know the first shape is a triangle. The second shape is a square. And the third shape is a trapezoid. That means if we're dividing by 3 and there's no remainders, our shape is going to be a trapezoid. If we're dividing by 3 and we have a remainder of 1, then that would be the shape that comes after, one shape after the trapezoid, which is the triangle. If we have a remainder of 2, which is 1 less than the next group of 3, our shape would be a square. So that's the reason you're dividing in groups of 3, because there are 3 shapes in this pattern. If there were 4 shapes in the pattern, you would be dividing by 4. If there were 2 shapes in the pattern, you would be dividing by 2, and so on. So let's go ahead and take a look at our notes and our guided practice for this lesson, and we'll go into this a little bit farther. So how can you use a repeating pattern to predict a shape? Now we know that a repeating pattern is made up of shapes or numbers that are part of a pattern. The rule for the repeating pattern here is going to be square triangle. So what will be the 37th shape in the pattern? And explain how you found out. So we know first shape is square, second is triangle, third is square, fourth is triangle, fifth is square, sixth is triangle. So I want to stop and think. If the pattern is square triangle, that means the first, third, fifth, and so on shapes are squares. Those are all odd numbers. The second, fourth, sixth, and so on are all triangles, and those are all even numbers. So 37, I already know, is an odd number. Now, since I'm only working with 2 shapes in this pattern, I can immediately decide that since 37 is an odd number, it's going to be one of the shapes that's in the odd number spots. The shapes that are in the odd number spots are my squares. All right, let's take a look at another example that has more shapes. Now this one has 3 shapes, just like we saw in the video lesson. This example says, Hilda is making a repeating pattern with the shapes below. The rule is heart, square, triangle. If Hilda continues the pattern, what will the 11th shape be? So let's stop and think. The triangle over here is in the 3rd, 6th, and 9th position, just like in the example we saw. The heart is in the 1st, 4th, and 7th position. So that's going to be 1 past the triangle in each one. Right after the triangle comes a heart. So it would be, since we know that the triangles are in multiples of 3, the 3rd spot, the 6th spot, the 9th spot, those are all multiples of 3. Now we know 4, 7, and so on. Those are all 1 more than a multiple of 3. And the square comes before the triangle. So that's going to be 1 less than a multiple of 3. So it's in the 2nd, the 5th, the 8th position, and so on. So now what I need to do is, since I'm working with a group of 3, I need to divide my number by 3. Now we know 11 is 1 less than a multiple of 3, because 11 divided by 3, we know 12 divided by 3 would give us 4. So 11 divided by 3 is going to give us 1 less than that. So we're going to look for the shape that's 1 before a triangle. Or the shape, if you're going to do 11 divided by 3, that's going to give you 3 with a remainder of 2, because 11 divided by 3 is going to be 3 remainder 2, because 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 more is going to give you 11. So if you did it, 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 more shapes to get to the 11th, we know that's going to be a square. Let's take a look at another example. Louisa used the rule blue, green, green, green to make a bracelet with a repeating pattern. She used 18 beads. How many beads did Louisa use to make the bracelet? How many beads are not green? So I want to stop and think. The pattern is blue, green, 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 blue, green, 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 and so on. So that means the blue is the first, followed by 3 green, then another blue would be the 5th, followed by 3 more green, and so on. So each group of 4 has 1 blue bead. So since I'm working with groups of 4, I'm going to divide by 4. So 18 divided by 4 is equal to 4 with a remainder of 2. Now, since 18 divided by 4 is 4 with a remainder of 2, that means there are 4 groups with 1 blue in each one, plus the next group, which just started, which only has 2 beads in it. And that one has 1 blue bead, because we know the blue bead is the first one in each group. So if we have 4 full groups plus 1 part of a group, that means we have 4 blue beads plus 1 more blue bead in that last part of the group, which tells us we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue beads. All right, now let's look at one more example before we jump into our guided practice. What is the 100th number in the pattern below? Now, if the rule that I'm following, the pattern that I have is 1, 3, 5, 7, that means I'm repeating these numbers over and over. So I want to stop and think. I know there are 4 numbers in this pattern. So I'm going to divide 100 divided by 4, which gives me 25. That tells me that the pattern is going to repeat 25 times. And since 25 times 4 is 100, the 100th number will be the 4th number in that pattern. Since it divided by 4 evenly, that means it's going to be the 4th number in the pattern, which is a 7. Next, let's take a look at our guided practice. So in the triangle, square, trapezoid pattern, what will the 48th shape be? What will the 50th shape be? So since there's 3 shapes in that pattern, triangle, square, trapezoid, we're going to divide by 3. So 48 divided by 3 is 16. Now, since 48 is a multiple of 3, it's going to be the 3rd shape in the pattern, which is a trapezoid. Now, the 50th shape is going to be, if we do 50 divided by 3, we're going to have 16 with a remainder of 2. So that's going to be 2 more than the triangle or 1 less than the triangle. It's going to be the same shape in both positions. So since 50 divided by 3 is 1 less than a multiple of 3, because 51 divided by 3 would give us 17, that means it's going to be the 2nd shape in the pattern, the one that comes before the trapezoid. Or sorry, before the trapezoid, and that's going to be a square. For number 2, what is the 20th shape in the pattern, triangle, circle, circle? So since we have 3 shapes, we're going to divide by 3. So 20 divided by 3 equals 6 with a remainder of 2, which means it's 1 less than another group of 3. So the shape is going to be the 2nd shape in our pattern, which is a circle. And for number 3, it says write the next 3 numbers in the pattern, 9276. We have 9276, another 9276, and then 9276, and so on, and then another 927. That takes us to the end of this lesson. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.